I'm Rachel Chamness, and today I'm talking with Angelyn Nicholson about fifth dimensional timelines. Welcome to Ascension and 5D Chat, where we discuss what is happening with our planet's ascension journey. I am Rachel Chamness. I help lightworkers connect to their spiritual helpers and light path.
Hi.
Hi, thanks so much for coming. Angelyn Nicholson is a vibrational alchemist, and she is at colorofkismet.com and everywhere.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Angelyn.
Well, I have been a therapist for about 20 years, and that in a more traditional sense, and that sort of led me into vibrational work. So I do energy healing of all different kinds, Reiki, all different kinds of Reiki. I do essential oil blends at my business, Color of Kismet, and they help move you towards spiritual and emotional advancement and healing. I do all kinds of stuff. So I'm super excited to be here and talk about the timeline.
Me too.
Timeline shifting.
Timeline shifting. So people are asking a lot about this lately. I feel like people are feeling timeline shift. We could talk about that first. Do you hear a lot about that? Like people getting these ascension symptoms that sort of feel like things change?
I have a lot of questions about stuff like, why is this happening? Why, gosh, I had somebody recently say, I know I booked the thing for this time. And yet when I looked at my calendar, the calendar didn't say that. And I went back in my head, and there's all these things that sort of aren't lining up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That happened to me the other day, but also happened to me in like little things like, yesterday I was making coffee. I looked at the clock. I was texting with a friend and making coffee. I looked at the clock. It was 6 minutes till. And I said to myself, at the 8 o'clock hour, my coffee will be done. And then 1 minute later, I was like, oh, it's 7 after. Well, I guess the coffee's done, but it doesn't look done. It doesn't feel like it's done. So I checked my text messages for time to make sure that I hadn't lost time, because I thought maybe I might have tranced out and came back, and I hadn't. And in fact, when I remember what text I sent when I looked at the clock and it was 9 or 8:56 or 7:56, whatever time it was actually saying 9:04. And I was like, what just happened? Was that a timeline shift? I mean, I felt like it was because I didn't lose time. It's a small example, but pretty weird, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think that's a really common example. Yesterday was the day I got to sleep in, and I did not want to get out of bed before 8 o'clock. And so when I looked and it was 8 o'clock, I was like, okay, I'm getting out of bed. I got out of bed, started making my coffee, and it was not 8 o'clock. Went back into my bedroom, looked at the clock. It had the right time on it. I don't know. I woke up on some other timeline.
I think it's funny that finding a new timeline would even affect the time. Like if we are moving to a place that has no time, and time is only a third dimensional construct, then why would time jump? I just think that's the weirdest example, but it is happening. Well, a lot of things that I hear is just that things are changed. And we talk about the Mandela Effect a lot, how things are different, Berenstain Bears, whatever, or all kinds of little things that people talk about Mandela Effect. And a lot of people like to just say, oh, that's just memory. That's just human memory or collective memory. But I don't think that it is. And then other people always say, well, why does Mandela Effect always affect big things like that everyone notices? But I don't think that's true either, because I have to tell you that I had this birthmark in between my toes my entire life. And of course, when I was little, I paid a lot of attention to that because it intrigued me, these things that you might have at birth. And I had it forever. And then about 2 years ago, it completely disappeared. And I don't have it anymore. And so I can't say that, that's Mandela Effect affecting large people, affecting large communities. That's something personal that happened to me. And I know that it happened, and it definitely wasn't in my mind. And it was just a timeline jump.
I feel like since 2020, since everybody had to be quarantined, that it's sped up this jumping around. I know that for a while, it felt like every single time that I left the house, I was noticing that something was completely different than when I left the house the time before. For example, my son and I don't know, went out sometime last autumn, and we're driving in a part of town we drive in regularly. And there was something that I pass probably twice a week that was completely boarded up. Grass was grown as if nobody had been there in 2 years. I mean, it was really weird. And I stared at it and stared at it and then was like, oh, I think it was just a timeline jump. And then later, so we're still going. We went to breakfast that day. And when we got to breakfast, this place that we've gone since he was a toddler, and I specifically go to that place because we can sit in the back. My son likes to move around a lot. And so I could, especially when he was a toddler, I could keep him in the booth, and there was a bathroom right there and I didn't have to worry. So I asked to sit in the back. We go to sit in the back where we always sit. And there was no bathroom. There was no bathroom back there. And I said, excuse me, there used to be a bathroom here? And he said, no, I've worked here for 8 years. There's never been a bathroom here. Yet I know the only reason we went to that place for years was because there was a bathroom right there. I don't know, except that it seemed like all of a sudden on that day in particular was when I started noticing it all the time happening. But that was a really big day because those two things happened. The one thing was boarded up, and then there was no bathroom all of a sudden. I was like, okay, I guess I'm needed here.
Yeah.
On this timeline.
So I guess our question to the audience is, have you been noticing these shifts? And if you have, we'd love to hear in the comments. But let's talk about why this is happening. Why is this happening? Why are there other timelines? Because there's a reason. And well, I'll get to that more, but I see them in sessions too. I'd like to talk about that. It's kind of interesting. But why do you think there's so many timelines between here being in 3D and being in 5D?
Well, yeah, my sort of take is that we as an energy are infinite. And so I was meditating once and I saw this vision of a bird flying, and I knew I was the bird. I saw the bird split into two, and then I saw the bird split again into four. And then I saw those split and keep splitting. And I realized and understood that what that meant was that my energy, as well as the collective, and that's how we all are here. We're all just a little piece of the collective. But even as ourselves, we are infinite. And so I believe that that there is a representation of us in every archetype and every conceivable environment. And there are things that happen in each of those places. Sometimes we get stuck. We call those past lives, but I think that they're just
many past lives are alternate lives. I think I get.
Yeah, I agree. And as we bump up against things in those timelines, in those past lives or whatever, sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes we need to clear things in those lives. And I think as we continue on path, as we're working, as we're figuring things out, as we're learning more about all of the things, they begin to collapse. As we clear karma here, we might collapse 3 or 4. As we clear karma here, we might collapse another 3 or 4. And it strengthens where we are. And then I think
That's so similar to what I get too. I love that. What I see is, so I see this in sessions a lot, where I see all these, for instance, if I were working on you, I'd see all these different Angelyns, and I would see them all coming into this timeline. So what I hear from Spirit is that many timelines are collapsing. As we get closer to Ascension, that's one timeline, and we have to collapse all these other ones. So sometimes I see these different Angelyns, like maybe you'll be a chef, or maybe you'll be totally different, like you took some other, you were a chef, so that makes sense. Which would be something else, or maybe just slightly different. And I see them waiting to be brought in. Sometimes I think what happens is if a person's having a session and they kind of wait, and I put them through these like clearing booths and bring them in. And I think that's why it can be so confusing when you have these two memories. Sometimes you have two memories. I remember I had this mark, and maybe I also remember not having it. for me, that didn't happen. I just remembered having the mark, but it's possible to have two going on in your head, and it can be confusing that way. But I believe it's all collapsing because we're going towards one timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard other people say that as well, which is pretty cool to get confirmation from different kinds of sources.
Well, I think that too. And I think that, that maybe as we strengthen and as we, become more sound, more, clear, that we then jump to the timeline where it's like not the heaviest, but the weightiest, like the one with the most weight that requires our attention. It's like we might have been on the timeline with the birthmark between our toes for X amount of years because you had to learn X, Y, Z, and then once you did that, then you were able to collapse that timeline into, where we are. I don't know. I feel like we keep sort of move. Do you feel like that we move around to the one that needs us or the one that is the clearest?
Yes. Well, think about it. If you're a light worker and you are working on other light workers and you're working on yourself, because you don't have to work on other light workers to be a light worker, but or other people, you can just be working on yourself and spreading your light around, and that works too. But we're working on ourselves, so why not go into a dimension where maybe we're working on ourselves less and bring that kind of energy in there, bring that information in there, because that's what's happening is you're collecting this information from other yous, when it's coming together.
A lot of my blends, my whole business was started through that way, the collapsing of timelines, where all of the sudden, so I make essential oil blends that have 40, 50, 60 different kinds of, thank you, different kinds of essential oils in them. And those were brought to me from some other timeline. The woman that showed herself to me said, I am you from a different time.
I love that.
And here's what you need. You can't possibly think you could learn all of this and what you've already learned in the same lifetime. My goodness, And so I took what she showed me and I made the blends that are here now, and they are awesome. They do.
They're amazing. I love them. I want a new one, by the way. I need to come get that.
Oh, good. Okay. Anytime.
I will. I'll be by for that. So how would a person know that they have collapsed a timeline? I mean, I think we talked a little bit in the beginning, but I've heard lots of things like vertigo for one, symptoms, suddenly having that sort of vertigo. For me, sometimes I feel like the world goes whoop, whoop. Like it tilts and comes back.
You are the first person that has said that besides me that I've ever heard.
Really?
From the time I was a little girl, I would ask my mother, why does everything go like this all the time? And she'd go, what are you talking about? And after I asked 4 or 5 people, nobody could tell me, but I'm here to tell you, from the time I was a little girl, I could hear things come out of my mouth. And then I would, in my vision, it would go, ooh, ooh. And I would feel a little bit dizzy. Yeah. And it still happens. I also sometimes see the walls like there's waviness in the walls. Do you ever see that?
I do. Yeah, I've seen that. It looks very similar to me than or you can kind of feel like a sudden like disassociation with where you are. Like, is this real? Are we in the Matrix? What's happening? And then you're like, whoa, okay, what just happened?
Yes. There have been times when so on Sundays, for example, I rarely leave the house on Sundays. I like to spend my whole day doing spiritually enriching things, doing things I often will meditate. I'll do yoga. I'll do channeling. I'll just do stuff like that on my own. I read cards for different things. And when I leave the house on Sunday night or on Monday morning, I often feel like this, I don't recognize the stuff that's around me anymore. I often feel like during those days that I collapse timelines, and that's why when I leave the house, everything feels really strange. And it's not that it feels unfamiliar. It feels some kind of familiar.
Yes. It's like it feels familiar, but it doesn't seem like the same familiar. It's a different familiar.
Yeah. Like there's like a what am I? I'm missing. Oh, okay. Oh, timelines. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure that's it.
Yeah. How often do we say that to ourselves?
Yeah, a lot. Oh, I'm
Well,
sure.
here's something good. And that is that as we're getting closer to Ascension and the world seems to be getting crazier, that I feel like finally the tides are turning, and that we were on what felt like a really horrible timeline that we couldn't avoid. And now it feels like there's a lot more hope for our timeline, for ourselves, and kind of getting out of this 3D mess a little bit sooner. Have you felt that?
Yes, there was a very distinct shift for me where things started heating up and I started going, this isn't right. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't what's supposed to be happening. I feel
I felt
very,
like that.
yeah, like I felt a little bit of fear because I felt like this
Yeah.
isn't this isn't it. And then I heard another light worker say this and it resonated so deeply. She said, we're not gathering to watch destruction and mayhem. You know, there are hundreds of thousands of light workers that have decided to come to Earth right here, right now, and we're not gathering to do anything except see the dawn of a new age. Period. That's it. Why would we be gathering otherwise? And I believe that she's right.
Oh, absolutely. That's what we're here for. We're here because we wanted to be here. We won the lottery to be here. We wanted to see this. Oh God, I just got so many chills.
I did
Amazing change. I mean, the dawn of a new Atlantis or Lemuria. Well, Lemuria better than Atlantis because Atlantis didn't end well, but a new Lemuria, you know, and yes, that's where we're here. And the timelines will be diverging, and those who stay on the 3D timeline will stay in the matrix, and we will not. And the planet will not. Those who stay on that 3D timeline will go somewhere else, or they will go through their lifetime and then wake up, of course, when they transition over. And that's what they've decided to do. So it's not like we can go out there and save everybody. That's not it. People are either coming because they've decided to ascend or not. And we live in a place of duality. And so we have to have some people do this and some people do that. That's how it works.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why arguing and staying in polarity doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't.
Because it's supposed to be some go this way and some go this way.
And so what's the point?
Well, to argue with somebody keeps us in polarity, and and I don't want to be in polarity. I want to be in duality. I want to be able to be all of everything and to have every part of everything within me and be okay with that. I don't want to be in opposition and angry and fighting.
It'll bring your vibration down. Yeah, it's not good.
Well, it keeps you 3D.
Yeah.
As long as you're arguing and angry and you're fighting and you're telling people they're wrong and I'm right, all of that is polarity, and all of that keeps us straight in the middle of 3D. And I'm not interested in that.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
100%. Yeah. I mean, you know, that's their path, and okay, good luck to you.
Sure. Yeah, there's no judgment.
It'll all be okay in the end.
There's no judgment. And that's part of conquering 4D. Judgment exists on 4D, and being able to conquer that judgment of others and instead just be okay with wherever they're at. Mm-hmm. That is duality. Like, that's the principle of having.
That's what 4D is. Yeah.
Right.
It's this huge duality between like this sort of like all the horrible things and then all the beautiful self-love. And that's how I see it. It's like two things. It's either like 100% like reptilian rule, all the bad things, and then 50%, I guess. And then the whole self-love. I see it like self-love. You can love yourself and accept all of yourself, then nobody can trigger you. Nobody bothers you, you know, or you're just like, you can be in that 0 point place where you're like, okay, that's your path. That's fine. You know, we don't need to argue. You can do whatever you like, and I'm going to do whatever I like. Mm-hmm. And then I think exactly what you're saying through that little spot is where
that's what takes us to 5D. Yeah. Being able to set down the judgment. And I think that that's something a lot of people need to hear, because right now there's a lot of back and forth about who's right. And the truth is that we're all right. There's infinite right answers, but the right answer for me doesn't have to match the right answer for you. It's okay.
And there's infinite timelines.
Right.
So you could still be right, even if it's not what we're saying, and still
Right.
get there. And I mean, just wait for it, because the trolls will be here talking about how we're so wrong and we need to go to their channel instead. Well, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just not the same as what we're
Right. Right.
doing.
Right.
You can get there however you want.
That's
If you're
right.
working on yourself and you're trying to get to Ascension, well, I think that you will.
Yeah.
You know, you'll find your way there. And I think that as the planet gets to that higher vibration, people will shift. If they're having a hard time finding that 5D, that they'll feel that shift, or they may choose to transition instead. They may take their exit point with, a virus or whatever.
Or whatever,
Mhm.
however they need to. I've been hearing more lately. There's been a lot more death. Personally, like I've heard more people talking about younger people dying and transitioning out, which, I think, that's a whole nother, discussion, but I think that is, personally, I think that's a fine option. If you don't want to have to be in all of this polarity and figure out your way right now, then maybe you just need to cycle through again. Maybe that's the right answer for you.
It is.
So
Go
I
through
don't,
it again.
right. I don't feel like there's, personally, I just don't, I think that keeping the conversation going all the time on the news and on social media and all of that stuff about who's right and sort of making fun of who's wrong and all this stuff, man, it is so low vibing, and it is not the timeline that
That's right.
I want to be on, really.
That's right. And it's no problem. It's no judgment if you decide you want to stay on the 3D track and you want to go through this whole 3D thing again. Perhaps it's because you want to learn something. We all came
Right.
into this life to learn things.
Right.
So that's good for you. Do it,
Right.
Some of us are kind of done with that, and we'd like to get to the next spot.
It's just karma. It's all it is. It's just karma.
And karma's not a bad thing. We all learn through trauma. We all learn through things that happen to us. That's part of being human. So, or humanoid maybe, or being 3D.
Yeah, it's part of being 3D.
Yeah. So people often are so afraid to go 5D because they're afraid they're going to lose their friends and family. Let's talk about that, because I feel like I totally understand this, but it's so hard to put into words to explain this to people, but I hear this a lot.
Well, the truth is they probably will.
Yeah, because that's what they chose, and it's okay. And also, people think, well, what will I do if I can't talk to my brother or my sister or my mom or my dad? Well, but it's not like that. It's hard to explain to people that 5D is like being the most amazing, clear medium that you've ever been. And I talk to people who have passed all the time. I spend more time with my friend who passed now than I did when he was alive, because he lived in another state. We talk all the time. I talk to my dad, I talk to others, and it's not so much separation that you think.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think the benefit of being willing to go through that that fear of losing people is that you find on the other end that when you've lost the judgment, so like we're back again to the 4D judgment, like when you can drop the 4D judgment and smoothly sail into 5D, you can look at your brother or sister or parent who thinks you're wrong and is really mad at you and blah, blah, blah. And you can go, I love you. I love you. And I don't know, like if you want to do that, that's cool. I'm just going to be over here, but I love you. I've had three very good friends now just completely fall off the face of the earth because they disagree with my choices around what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. And very important people that I've known for decades. And ultimately, I love all three of them, and I'm fine with them choosing different from me. They were not fine with me choosing different from them. And that's something they have to work through on the fourth dimension, not me. I'm okay with where they are. I'm sad that they're gone. I feel sad that they're gone, but I can honor the 3D part and say, I'm sad that they're gone, but I do not hold judgment, and fly off into the fifth dimension. And if they want to show up, they can show up, but I still love them. And I think that people are afraid of having animosity or.
That's a very good point.
You know,
and even if it's someone that there's not any animosity, but just doesn't want to deal with their things or go into that sort of space of shadow work, because that's the only way we're going to go forward, of course. Dropping density, dropping heavier thoughts, not by refusing them, but by working through them so that we can release them. For people who don't want to do that, that's because they haven't come here to do that. They've come here to be the duality, or they've come here to be the opposition, so that we have these two sides and we choose which one we want, and they have chosen that one, and they'll go on, and nothing horrible is going to happen to them, because on the other side, we're all one. We're all parts of God. We're all one big one. So what does it matter? We'll all be together again. They'll all be okay again. So it's just their journey will be longer than ours. That's all. And that's what they've chosen. Let's talk about how to come to this place where other people's choices don't bother you. Perhaps some people are having trouble with this in general. What kind of advice could we give people who are saying, I just have such a hard time letting go with judgment of others or their judgment of me?
Well, my answer is then you need to find the place within you that has trouble with that and figure out what the belief is there. Because usually there's a belief that, like, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough to love, or I'm not important enough to love even though I'm different. There's beliefs like that get us caught in polarity.
And I bet too, one could be, nobody really loves me. So if I lose this person, who's going to love me?
Well, hopefully you're building that relationship with yourself so you can stand on your feet, I mean, that's, at the end of the day, that's what duality is being able to say, I have a shadow, I have a light, all of that is the same, and we're okay with that. I'm okay with that. Sometimes I'm not very nice. Most of the time I am, because I've worked through a lot of shadows, but sometimes I'm still not very nice. And so there's still more to do, but I know that I'm working to become fully in duality. That to me is the goal for that. Just blazing through.
That would be my answer too. Well, then you just have to find, where's your trigger point? What's triggering you? Why does that trigger you?
Right.
Well, what is the reason? Well, what do you think makes that happen? Like, just trace it back, or, get some help to trace it back to find what it is that needs to be worked on, which needs shadow work. Yeah, exactly what you're saying in different words.
And then put a little light in there. I mean, all you're doing in shadow work is bringing like a flashlight and going, what the heck is this? I need to figure this out. And you're just looking at it, and you're 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 tracing it back until you can find the place. And then once you can do that, usually you gain different perspective, and you're collapsing timelines every time you do it, pulling yourself into greater duality.
Yeah.
Which is the goal.
It is. I call that 0 point or fifth dimensional viewpoint, where you just, once you're really looking at that, then now you have separated yourself from it. And I think sometimes that's the hardest part, is that people take these problems or blocks and they identify with them so hard. They say so many times, I just have this block. And so I just need to get past this block. And that block becomes part of them, becomes part of what they consider their personality, or like, I'm just a sick person, so that's part of me. And then once you really stop and say, hey, that is a belief, and now you're looking at it, you can see that this is not you. This is something else. How can I get rid of this? Oh, I can. And sometimes even just separating yourself from it, just like separating yourself from that horrible thought. I just had a horrible thought, but that thought isn't me, because I heard the thought and said, whoa, And so obviously I didn't say that thought. That's another thought. So we just take that thought and look at it and disperse it. That was not my thought, because the I is not those thoughts.
Mhm. Right. Right. That's a filter. I actually have a YouTube video about the filters that we put on when we're little children that are entirely innocuous, that just show up. Somebody once and in church ignored you when you were 4 and you didn't understand why. And so you got quiet and you believed that nobody wanted to hear what you had to say. It might not have impacted you that much, but in that moment, you caught it. And then, fast forward to being a teenager and you believe, because that became a filter that you're looking through now. You believe by the time you're a teenager, nobody wants to hear what you have to say. So you never say anything. You don't have an opinion. You've learned that in order to please people and to have people who love you, you have to please them and not say anything.
I
That's
like
how
that you call that a filter. That makes sense.
Yeah,
I call them stories, but yeah.
Stories. Yeah. I tell
Stories you
people
tell
that
yourself.
it's like you put on a pair of glasses when you're 4, and that happened at church, and the glasses say, I'm not worth listening to. And then they're just on there and you don't realize they're glasses and you're just wearing them. And then you put on another pair when you're 6 that says something else, and another pair at 7 that says something else. And next thing you know, you're a grown up and you're like, it's nothing but like crazy beliefs about yourself, and none of them are true. And that's our shadow work, folks. That's the shadow work.
And sometimes you can have a story or a filter that comes from experience. This happened to me 20 times. So this is a thing that happens to me. And then we identify with it too much and turn it into now it'll never stop happening, because we keep saying, this always happens to me. And
well, that's what the glasses are. Once you put the glasses on, you're looking through the vision of, this is what always happens to me.
Yeah.
And, people come to me for 20 years saying, this is what always happens to me. And I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah. It's amazing what can happen when you release that. It's life-changing. It really is.
Well, that's the only way to deal with shadow work, right? To be able to see different perspectives and to question whether or not something is true, which we've been taught by lots and lots of things in our culture not to question whether or not it's true. And I think that, to sort of circle back, we're like at this point in time where that's maybe the most important thing we can do on an individual level and on a mass consciousness level.
It is. And that's the message I keep getting. If we just work on ourselves, then we all ascend as a group. Your work with other people helps them ascend, sure. But your work on yourself helps us all ascend,
Right.
And all of us just need to also work on ourselves. And that's what we're doing. And that's what makes us light workers. And that's what puts us on this path. But worth saying.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I really love talking to you always.
Thank you. I love talking to you too.
I want you to tell. Yeah.
It's always so cool to see what lines up. We know each other pretty well, but we don't talk about this kind of stuff all the time.
We need to.
We should.
I'll be over tomorrow.
Okay.
But I want you to tell everyone about your Patreon account that's coming.
Yeah, we're going to be launching a new Patreon page in late September, and they start at $5, go all the way to $15. If you don't know how Patreon works, you just pay like a little tiny monthly fee, but you get content every single month. And the content will range from guided meditations and card readings, to talks about what's going on in the world, different tools that you can use in practice, things like that. So I'm really excited about it. I've been working really hard on it. So it'll be launching in late September. Just keep looking for it. You can get on my email list if you want to know more, if you want to know when it comes out, you can find that on my website.
All right. Everybody go to Angelyn's website, which has the best name of all. I love your name. Color of Kismet.
Color of Kismet.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for having me.